Chapter 13 of Resisting Temptations. So long as we continue in this world, we must not flatter ourselves with an imagination so vain as that of being exempted from tribulations and trials. These are so inseparable from mortality that Job calls the life of man a warfare or place of exercise. It highly concerns every one of us upon this account to take a great care for managing himself under his temptations, to watch and pray diligently as being duly sensible that he hath a watchful enemy to deal with, one who will not fail to take all advantages of deceiving, and who goes about continually seeking whom he may devour. Nor must our attainments and virtue dispose us to remit of this care. For virtue is no absolute security. No man is so perfect, so holy, as never to be assaulted or out of the reach of this adversary. We may defend ourselves against his attacks, but still attacked we must, and most certainly shall be. Now, though there be great hazard and uneasiness, yet there likewise great profit to be made from temptations, particularly as they contribute to the humbling of our minds, to the purging off our dross, and the making us wiser by suffering. This is the rough way to happiness which all the saints of God have traveled before us, and by it at last were self-conducted to their journey's end. And they who fell off and were discouraged at the ruggedness of the passage are all reprobates and castaways. No order or profession of men is so sacred, no place so remote or solitary, but the temptations and troubles will find them out and intrude upon them. Nor ought it to seem strange that these should haunt and pursue us close at all times and places, since we ourselves carry about us the very matter of our temptations, and can never run away from the inborn concupiscence upon which they work, and from whence they take occasion to destroy us. This is the account we may reasonably give ourselves, why there should be such an uninterrupted succession of temptations and miseries, and why one trouble should press so hard upon the heels of another. For how indeed can it be otherwise, since with our innocence we lost our safety and happiness and must be born to trouble, because the ground of our trouble is now become a part of our nature. Many men involve themselves deeper in temptations by being too solicitous to decline them. For we must not suppose ourselves always to have conquered a temptation when we have fled from it. The nobler and sometimes the more effectual way is to vanquish them, patient, enduring, being humbled under them. And much is plain that by declining a temptation we have not disarmed it. The root is standing still, and we will soon be sprouting it again. And a man who flees is so far from getting ground upon his adversary that he rather gives him encouragement to pursue more vigorously the way to overcome it by patience and long suffering, which, by God's assistance and by degrees, though perhaps but slow ones, is more likely to succeed than heat and vehemence and any the violentest and most obstinate efforts of our own strength. When you find yourselves tempted, be sure to ask advice. And when you see another, so deal with him gently. Support him with compassion and administer all the comfort in your power, as you could not but wish to be treated yourself were you his afflicted circumstances. The beginning of all temptations to wickedness is the fickleness of our mind and want of trust in God. An inconstant and irresolute man is like a ship without a pilot, driven to and fro at the mercy of every gust of wind. Metals are tried in fire, and accountable men in the furnace of affliction. We seldom know the true extent of our own power till temptation discover it to us. But watchfulness, which is always necessary, is chiefly so when the first assaults are made. For the enemy is more easily repulsed if we never suffer him to get within us. But upon the very first approach, draw up our forces and fight him without the gate. 'Twas well advised of a poet, take physic early, medicines come too late, when the disease is growing inverterate. And this will be more manifest if we observe by what methods and degrees temptations grow upon us. The first thing that presents itself to the mind is a plain, single thought. This straight is improved into a strong imagination, that again, enforced by a sensible delight, then follow evil motions, and when these are once stirred, there remains nothing but the assent of the will, and then the work is finished. Now the first steps of this are seldom thought worth our care, sometimes not taken notice of, so that the enemy frequently is got close up to us and even within our trenches before we observe him. And we have lost the day for want of defending ourselves while he was in a condition of being resisted. For the longer we defer the engagement, the weaker we grow, and the more our adversary gathers strength. The season of these trials is various and uncertain. Upon some, they are severer presently after their conversion, upon others towards the latter end of their days. Some have them so thick repeated that their whole life is one continued conflict, and some again have but very few and gentle trials, all which different cases are ordered by a just and wise God, who knows what each man deserves and what he is qualified to undergo, and weighs all circumstances so justly that his several dispensations are constantly subservient to the salvation and happiness of his chosen servants. Let us not therefore despair when temptations beset us, but excite our zeal and pray to God more fervently that he would be our present help and refuge in all of our troubles. And as St. Paul expresses it, that he would, with the temptation, also make a way to escape, that we may be able to bear it. Let us humble ourselves under the trying hand of God, and patiently submit to his good pleasure in all our tribulations. For those who do so, he will exalt in due time, and save them that be of a meek and contrite spirit. But temptations and afflictions a man is brought, as it were, to the touch. By these his proficiency is measured and easily discernible. The greater these are, the more acceptable the sufferer is to God, and the brighter luster they add to his virtue. For to be religious and zealous in the service of God when no uneasiness is upon us, this is no mighty matter. But if we can suffer with patience and resignation and continue steady in the love and service of God, when He afflicts and sends bitterness into our souls, this argues a noble disposition and promises an extraordinary perfection. Some persons have come off with safety and honor in very sharp and trying instances, and yet are worst in common and trivial ones. In this case is capable of a very good improvement, for thus, no doubt, God gives men warning that they should not presume upon their own strength, but humbly take sanctuary in Him in matters of difficulty, moved by the experience of that weakness and frailty which hath yielded to slighter and less violent temptations.